Mayor of London, is with us. Just been talking about intermittent fasting, haven't we? And people do that through choice. A lot of kids in our schools, you would say here in London, have no choice, and so as a result, you're going to make sure they get a good meal.
Well, today's a historic day for our city. For the first time ever, every single child who goes to primary school in our great city will be receiving a free school meal. And for the reasons you've suggested, we've got a cost of living crisis. I know from personal experience the difference receiving a means-tested free school meal made to me led to better attendance, more attainment. We know it leads to children having better concentration, more productivity, but for parents, it gives them a breathing space and a lifeline. And it's really important we recognise that in our great city, 1 out of 3 families are struggling financially. They're skipping basic necessities or relying upon debt to pay for them. And it's right that every child in London should be able to have at least one nutritional meal a day.
So if 1 in 3 families like that, that means 2 in 3 families are not, and yet they're still receiving free school meals.
Look, in our country, we've got a rich tradition of universal provision. Think about the NHS. Think about free travel for older people, pensions and care and so forth. Of course, I remember receiving free school meals, the great meal we had, the respite to my parents. What I remember most, though, is the embarrassment and shame from queuing up separately to receive my free school meals token, eating my lunch separately from other children. I don't want other children to go through what I went through in relation to the stigma and shame. But we also know that actually if everyone's had a decent meal at lunchtime, they do better in terms of behaviour, concentration and so forth. But also actually, economies of scale means it's cheaper to provide a meal for every child in a school rather than just some.
It's not cheaper than providing for a third, though, is it? Providing for 3/3, as it were.
But here's the problem, Kate. In England, to be eligible for a free school meal, your family income has got to be less than £7,400 after tax. There are many children living in poverty, going hungry, not eligible for a free school meal that's
But that
means-tested.
£135 million, you could use some of that to further benefit those kids who need it most.
Well, the issue is this. In primary schools, it's really difficult not to have those who are means-tested eating with those who are non-means tested. I think universal provision is really important. You, by the way, Kay, if you went to the NHS, expect to show your means when you're receiving treatment. Nor would you, by the way, if you're an inpatient, be told, you know what, you can afford to pay for your meal. You eat a different meal to the others who can't.
That's a different argument, though, Mr Mayor.
Well,
Some
no,
might suggest that that's what you should be doing, I suppose. But
well, I'm against means testing for the NHS,
yes,
if that's what you're advocating.
Yeah, but that doesn't fall under your criteria. This does. Something else that does is ULEZ. Oh, my goodness, that makes you unpopular.
Well, let's deal with ULEZ, which is linked, by the way, to children, which is, we know, the consequences of air pollution. It's not just the thousands of premature deaths a year, but also children having stunted lungs forever. So what the ULEZ is seeking to do is to protect lives, save children's lungs, but also to address the climate emergency and reduce congestion. And it is a fact in central London where we have the ULEZ, we've had it for a number of years, we've seen a reduction of almost 50% of pollution, a third fewer children being admitted to hospital with air pollution-related illnesses. In inner London, where we expanded it, we've seen a further reduction of 20%. Children going to 1,400 schools breathing cleaner. If it's good enough for them, why not out of London?
You're penalising people who thought they were doing the right thing when they were told by a previous government to buy diesel cars.
What we know is if you are driving an older non-compliant car, you yourself are breathing in toxins, particularly matter, nitrogen dioxide, reducing your life expectancy. But also, you've got 2 kids in the back, affecting them as well. And we've got to recognise...
The good people of London thought they were doing the right thing when Gordon Brown said, buy yourself a diesel car. And now you're saying, sorry, I'm really going to penalise you for doing that, what you were told to do all that time ago by my government, a Labour government.
Well, that government was a long time ago. Since then, we know the consequences of air pollution. 4,000 premature deaths, roughly speaking, in London. The government says across the country between 28 and 36,000.
Start replacing those vehicles. People can't afford it.
Which is why I've stepped in the absence of government support and made sure every single family in London with a non-compliant car, and by the way, 9 out of 10 cars seen driving in outer London on an average day are compliant, but we're supporting those that aren't, supporting families, supporting small businesses, supporting charities. The government has supported other cities around our country with their clean air zones. I welcome that. Why not London?
Yeah, you talk about it being a Labour government a long time ago, a future Labour government potentially as soon as next year. That leader also says you need to rethink.
What I think what Keir's said
And
is
Angela
we've got to listen. And I've been listening to Londoners, which is why in January I announced a scrappage scheme of £110 million supporting the lowest income families, smallest businesses,
You said you
charities.
need to think again.
And
And what
those
happened in
disabled.
Uxbridge?
In July, we expanded that to every single family receiving child
happened in Uxbridge?
benefit. After Uxbridge, we expanded the eligibility. So now every single family in London is eligible for support, an additional £50 million.
What if you
support
lose the
to,
election next
London.
May, the local election, the mayoral election, as a result of ULEZ? Will it still have been worth it for you?
Listen, I have no intention of losing next
but what if
May's
you do?
election because I know Londoners are with me in relation to
They're not.
in relation to wanting cleaner air, in relation to policies that
In which
clean
case,
up,
why did
air.
Labour lose Uxbridge?
Well, there are a variety of reasons why the by-election in July, a month before the ULEZ being expanded, was a difficult election for us. Well, listen, whenever there's an election and there's a Labour candidate standing, I want that person to win. Of course, I'm disappointed. We lost Uxbridge and Royston. But
Even the Labour leader said it was
partly
partly as a result of what happened with ULEZ and the fact that it was being
But this is
extended
the point,
a month after.
Kay, about the Ultra Low Emission Zone scrappage scheme, which is, even though the government's given us no support, we now have additional support going to those Londoners who are worried. And the good news is actually, in outer London, 9 out of 10 cars are already compliant. They won't pay a penny more and will see the benefits. And those that aren't will receive support.
Labour lost that by-election as a direct result of ULEZ.
And since the by-election in July, I've announced further support to Londoners. A lot of people thought they would be affected by the ULEZ. Now they know they aren't going to be affected.
I'll put it to you again. If you lose next May as a result of the ULEZ scheme, would it still have been worth it to you?
So I've been clear from the outset. The decision to expand the ULEZ wasn't an easy one. It was a difficult one, but I think it's a vital one and it's the right one. I can't sit aside, Kate. I know the evidence. I know the evidence, which is thousands of premature deaths. I know the evidence children have stunted lungs. I know the evidence the ULEZ policy works. I simply can't stand idly by. By the way, the same things were said to me when I voted as an MP to ban smoking in enclosed public spaces. You wouldn't now think about reintroducing that in enclosed space. And I think it's really important when you've got evidence of premature deaths, you've got evidence that a policy works, you show leadership. And that's what I've done in London.
Sadly, we're out of time. I must let you get on. Running us, great city. Thanks very much indeed for
Always a
joining us.
pleasure.
As always.